Hi, welcome to another episode of Zazzle Chat. I'm here with Chris Bauman. If you recall, he's from our platform team, and last time he was here, he talked to us about making designs for
Events.
events.
All the events. So hopefully you took that advice, did some designing for events. Yeah.
So actually, Chris is a man of many talents, and today he is going to be talking to us about embroidery. So if we take a step back, embroidery has been on our site for a long time. We have a lot of embroidered products, but the products that we make in-house are hats, totes, and shirts. And compared to the other products, for example, hats, embroidered hats has a lot less of designs than printed trucker hats designs. And there's probably two reasons. I think the first reason is it used to have a very, very old product page. So because digital embroidery is really complicated on the back end, it took us a while to update that, and we just recently updated it. It used to look like it was from the 2000s, and it was from the 2000s, but now the technology has been updated and it looks like it's, in this 2017 age and date again. And the second thing is, arguably more important reason, is that there's a misconception, or there's a slight misconception about uploading embroidered art, is that you have to pay to play. And so today we're going to kind of dispel those myths for you and explain to you why there's a cost, if there's a cost, and sometimes there might not be a cost, and some tips and tricks on how to better design on embroidery. So, without further ado, Chris, tell us about, Zazzle Embroidery.
You bet. So it's been around since 2008. I think that's when we first launched it. And, it's just like this hoodie here, nicely embroidered down at our own internal facility. But embroidery is a mechanical process. That's definitely one big difference you have to take into account, especially when designing for an embroidered product, is that you're going from something that's taking a bunch of dots or pixels that is able to print that, to now taking something that you did, the same pixels, but it converts that into mechanical instructions for a needle to go down, up, over, and specific colors. Threads instead of this blend of inks. So you kind of have to think differently about it. But I think when you start to get in that mindset, you can create some really cool things.
Yeah, this is a completely different process than our print process. We launched the Fuse process a couple years ago, and we even launched the Zazzle Heart, that process. But this is really, really interesting because it takes a brand new approach to all these products, and it's very classy, and it's back in trend. Embroidery is definitely picking up. We're seeing them on runways. We're seeing them in day-to-day. Dad hats are back in trend. Good news for dads, especially as Father's Day is approaching. So let's talk about the misconception that Zazzle charges you to publish on embroidered products.
Certainly. So the biggest thing is that you have to take that digital file, Adobe Illustrator, PNG, Photoshop, and you have to convert that to mechanical instructions, a stitch file. We call that a digitization process. And so in order to do that, that file, that art file that you upload, we actually send that to professional, full-time stitch conversion folks. I mean, they do this all the time. They are pros. And in fact, it's a lot of an art as much as it is a skill and science. So they do this full-time. And so when you upload that, it takes about 24 to 48 hours to get that stitch file back, and then the item will go into production. So it takes a little bit longer, but again, it's converting pixels in this digital world into a mechanical world. So that's kind of the unique thing about it. And the pay-to-play, again, it costs us because these folks are definitely a rare breed. It's really hard to find them. And so we do kind of pass along that cost. And so that's why it costs to do that. But the nice thing is, when you do that, you're actually buying the stitch file. So when that stitch conversion happens, you'll actually have access and you actually own that stitch file. So speaking of, we have two file formats that if you already own, you can just upload right away. There's the .dst, which is probably the most common type of stitch file out there. But then there's also the .ofm, and that's specific to the machines that we use at our own production facility. So if you have either of those, you can upload those right away, and you'll immediately see it on the product. And in fact, you can begin to choose the thread color if you want to make changes to it. So you'll be able to see that right away. And if you already have one of those files, then you can just publish right away. It won't cost you anything to publish. So again, it's only for that stitch conversion file that you have to pay for.
Yeah, so we're not charging you actually to upload the product. We're actually charging for the digitalization of that art. So if, and then we actually don't charge for fonts. So any of the fonts that we have on the site, if you just want to publish a font or saying, that's free to upload and publish because we've already paid for that cost up front.
Yeah, that was great. A few things, the fonts that you see in the font tool, those are the ones that are already like embedded and tied in with the embroidery machines.
Correct.
They're going to be a different font set than if you were doing printed products. So just know that it's not a one-for-one. So you won't find all the fonts that you will on digital or on the printing side as you will embroidery. So different set.
And that's probably because like some of the wedding fonts are a lot thinner, cursive, and those just don't translate into an embroidered process.
Right.
So we're really optimizing those fonts for you guys.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this digital conversion and
Okay.
digitalization, stitch conversion, lots of names. But again, can you remind us why these files need to be converted?
Sure. So again, going from something that's a blend of inks to a finite like piece of thread. There's some things you can do with inks you can't with stitches and thread. A few things to keep in mind. One is that when you do this, it's mechanical instructions. The mechanics are based upon how far this needle has to travel. So it's all based upon specific dimensions. So when you're designing for embroidery, you actually have to design for the dimensions of a 2-inch by 3-inch area instead of 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels. It's just different. So there's no DPI, there's nothing like that. So start to think in inches when you're doing it. If you want to run some tests, you can upload just a block and get a sense of what it looks like on a hat. You can kind of get a sense of how much space it's going to take up. But when you start to design, there's a few things to keep in mind. As Monica mentioned, the wispy fonts, why they don't translate well is that for the stitch to work well, for the machine to actually create something good, the minimum amount you really want for a line is about 1/16 of an inch. And so the wispy fonts really don't translate well because it is a thread. You can't really get it to bend around and do all this stuff without tying it in a bunch of knots.
And mostly it's a continuous thread for the most part.
That's right. Usually the same color of thread that you see, it's just one time and it's all a continuous set of stitching, a single piece of thread that's just made wonderful. So that's a big thing. It's about 1/16 of an inch as the thinnest line. A big one is no gradients. You can't go fade from black to white. You can't blue to pink, whatever. You can't have that kind of meshing of the two colors because, again, you can't do that with thread. You either have blue thread or white thread or red thread. There's no kind of in between. So you want to design with hard color stops. So get the two right next to each other. So that's an important piece as well. And also, I mentioned the size, the thickness, the gradients.
Sorry, I just want to clarify for the designer's clarification. You did mention that once the designer converts the file, that file is there. So again, if you converted a artwork for a hat, you can use that same artwork on a tote or a shirt. Because that artwork is yours, it will be in your files that you own. The only issue is you can't like size it up. So like say you want to do a hat that's probably a smaller size and you want to make that artwork larger for a tote, because the digital embroidery works based on size and not pixel, you'll have to, even though it's the same artwork, you'll have to create a different size. So each size is one set of artwork.
Yeah.
Just to like make that really clear.
Very good point. Yeah, so you can't scale it up just by dragging it over. Each unique size you do for a stitch file conversion will be a separate purchase. Each one is a unique file.
And that makes sense because it's all done based on kind of a XY coordinate grid. And so obviously the grid files for a smaller piece of art versus a larger piece of art is kind of different.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, let's talk about the cost of this conversion.
Certainly.
So the cost is actually pretty complicated. And the reason is because it is an estimate until we know actually how much it costs. So when you upload a file, it tells you an estimated cost. Oftentimes, I would say about 90%, we are higher and we actually charge you a lower price. 10% of the time we may be slightly under, but that is something we don't know the actual cost of until we actually send it to the maker, the embroidery.
Yeah, the stitch conversion folks.
Stitch conversion folks. And so that is the one thing that we would put a hold on your credit card and charge you the final afterwards.
But it's only usually 24 or 48 hours. Then it's known of how many stitches it took.
Yeah. So that is kind of complicated, but I think based on all the complexities that goes on the back end, it's easy enough to understand.
Yeah. Probably a cool feature that you'll see as soon as you have that stitch file in place and when you publish a product, on the right-hand side of the design area, you'll actually see a little, what looks like a play button, and it's the stitch player. And we'll actually kind of get to see what the embroidery machine will do to create your file. So you can just hit the play button, and all of a sudden you'll see on the screen, it looks like it's stitching away, and you'll get to see that actual stitch file converted into, a digital format so that you can kind of see it. It's really pretty cool.
Yeah, totally. Do you have some other tips? Let's just run through some of the tips that you mentioned. So first of all, no gradient on the designs.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because colors are singular, they have to be blocked. Design for size, not pixel.
Right, and then the minimum width of a line of about 1/16 of an inch. And probably one more important one to note is we do have the fonts in our system, but one thing we can't do is take those fonts and overlap them with one of your designs. It's just coming from two different places. So if you want to have a design with font over it, you'll need to actually put that font into your design file. It's an interesting restriction. I could go into the technical mumbo jumbo as to why, but you'd fall asleep. So just know that if you're going to use the font from our system and your design, they can't overlap. And our system will tell you that you can or can't do it.
I mean, you won't even have the chance to upload it.
You won't even have the chance. You won't be able to purchase and publish it. So it will warn you. I just want to let you know now that if you have some kind of design that has letters over it, whatever it may be, you need to design and incorporate that into your design so that the stitch conversion people can take it all into consideration and create the best product possible. Yeah, so that's the last tip I could think of.
Cool. So I think this was really helpful for me to kind of rehash it. Chris is very knowledgeable about this. One last piece of announcement is because we've spent a lot of time on the back end updating it, for the next 3 months we are looking for more designs, so we are temporarily reducing the price of that digital conversion fee. So for the next 3 months it's going to be kind of at cost to you guys. We will be, we're hoping that this kind of, you guys can start learning how to use the tool, learning how to optimize your designs and publish them, and for a limited time only.
Yeah.
We are looking for great designs. These do really well in the marketplace. There's not as many designs, but they do very well in comparison to our trucker hats. And we are looking to add a lot more products in the near future. So if you publish these files now. You can own the artwork and eventually transfer them onto other products when we buy them, or when we launch them, not buy them, when we launch them.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to all these great new designs, and I think you'll actually be really amazed at the quality of the product and just the premiumization that happens when you get a product embroidered. I think it's really fantastic. So looking forward to seeing what you create.
And as always, if you have any questions or follow-ups, please hit us up on the forums. We'll be sure to take a look and respond to those as soon as possible. Thank you.